Welcome to Jazz on My Mind, Coast to Coast. I'm Richard Blackwell. This is the show that is dedicated to jazz lovers around the world. Every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we bring you jazz events from Los Angeles to New York, along with performances and jazz chats with the legends, current and upcoming jazz stars. And get ready, because this evening we're going to have a serious jazz educational program with 4 outstanding jazz musicians. So be prepared to take some notes. Tonight we'll have a jazz chat with the legendary trumpeter and author, Mr. Tony Smith. Also with us is a fantastic bassist and educator, Mr. Vincent Adkins. Plus, the great pianist and composer, Rege, is going to make a return visit. But first, let's welcome a young man who is a terrific saxophonist and a jazz enthusiast. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Posey to Jazz on My Mind. Therese, come on over here.
How you doing?
Good to see you, Therese.
Good to see you.
Hold that mic a little bit closer. There you go. Therese, right. It's good to see you. I'm glad you made some time to be on the show tonight, because I've heard you play, I've heard your music, and I thought the Jazz on My Mind audience would be delighted to know more about Therese Posey.
I'm glad to be here.
First of all, let's begin by, where are you from, Therese?
I'm originally from Charles County, Maryland.
All right. And what brought you to Wilmington, Delaware? Because we're live in Wilmington. What brought you to Wilmington, Delaware?
Change.
It'll do it every time, won't
it?
Yeah. Now, saxophone. When did you start playing the sax?
I started playing saxophone at the age of 10.
And what gravitated you to the saxophone?
I just love music. About the mid-'70s, I was enjoying hearing Grover Washington.
Oh, yeah.
So
that'll do it. What?
I've been hooked ever since.
Now, some of the people who, because when you start playing an instrument, there has to be some people who influence you. You mentioned Grover Washington. Are there any other great musicians who influence you along the way?
Kenny G, Bonnie James, and Coltrane.
Yeah, John Coltrane.
Right.
Yeah.
They just inspired me to just keep pushing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get there.
Now, what kind of training did you have? Did you take lessons? Did you learn how to play on your own? What were some of the ways that you learned how to play the sax?
Well, I started in school. I believe it was 5th grade. I started with a clarinet. And when I got to high school, or junior high, I started playing the saxophone.
Yeah.
So after that, I started playing in church. And then when I came to Wilmington, years later, I ran into Harry Spencer.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So that's how I came.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Well, when you mentioned Harry Spencer, Harry was on the show performing a couple of weeks ago. Outstanding saxophonist. And
yes, he is.
And a person can learn a lot about not just the saxophone, but music from Harry Spencer. Did you pick anything up from Harry?
So much.
Tell us about some of the things that you got.
Well, I started here. When I first started with Harry, I couldn't read at all. Harry said, don't worry about it. I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I'm learning, not only learn how to read music, but he's teaching me how to breathe and calm down and, take my time.
Yeah.
And really get into it. So.
Yeah. If you didn't pick up the saxophone, hypothetically speaking, if you didn't pick up the sax, is there another instrument maybe you would have gravitated to?
Maybe the bass.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it about the bass that grooves you?
I just like the beats.
That bottom, huh?
Right.
Now, we're here in Wilmington, Delaware. You're playing at a lot of places. What other things are you doing with your music? I know you got a CD out.
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about the CD.
Okay.
Tell me some things about it.
Okay, the CD, I was going through a lot of life changes at the time. I think I was at one of my lowest points. So I said, well, the psychiatrist told me I had to go see a psychiatrist. Guys,
Wow.
So bad.
Wow.
So he told me, he said, listen, you better find something to do. Because if you don't, you ain't going to make it.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine said, pick up the horn. So I picked the horn up, and I started playing. I met Harry. Harry started working with me. So I got my confidence back. So I ran into a guy named Tommy Mack, was with the computer. So we started putting things together. And it started flowing from there. I was playing most everything on that CD. I played from the heart. I can't say I wrote anything.
Yeah.
I just played for what I felt.
So the compositions on your CD are all your original material, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And I've heard that CD. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an excellent, smooth jazz CD. You can put that CD on and you can really sit back and relax. So I think you have accomplished that avenue, relaxation, because you definitely got that together.
Yeah, that came. It took a while, but I'm here now. I'm ready to do my thing.
Yes, you are. Now, let me ask you a question about jazz. When you started playing the saxophone as a youngster, did you like jazz at that time, or was it just music that you liked?
Always loved jazz.
Really?
Yes.
Now, when you started playing, in comparison to now, how do you think jazz has gone? What do you think it's taken a better direction when you first started playing to now, or do you think it's taken a turn for the worse?
Most definitely came for the better. It's more soothing. You can get your thoughts out, and you can put your feelings out there. Okay. You can do all that at one time.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Now, talking about your CD, what's the title? What's the name of your CD?
Jazz and Blues.
Jazz and Blues. Yeah. Now, that's a beautiful combination. A lot of people don't know, but jazz and blues are similar. They go hand in hand.
Yes, they go hand in
fact, the blues was first, and then jazz came along.
Yes.
So it's called Jazz and Blues. What are some of the titles of the cuts that you have on that CD?
That's a good question. Let me see. One is called What You Mean to Me. One is You Got to Go. One is Let Me Walk with God.
What is your favorite cut on that CD, Jazz and Blues?
First one, What You Mean to Me.
What You Mean to Me. That's your favorite, huh?
That's my favorite.
Now, see, you got your horn with you today. This is absolutely a beautiful piece of instrument. Now, I got to ask you, since you have your horn with you, Torres, do you feel like blowing a little notes for us?
I could do something.
Can you?
Yeah,
I'll hold the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Torres. He's gonna play a little something for us this evening here on Jazz on My Mind. Yeah, all right. I like that. Now tell the audience, what was that you just laid on us?
Just something on the heart. Just something about the blue sky. I couldn't think of a song, so I just went on and did something what I was feeling right about now.
That was it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think you're an outstanding jazz saxophonist, and you're appearing at places here in Wilmington, Delaware. Are you doing some things around town?
Yes.
Now, if someone wants to get in touch with you, they want to stay in or get your music, purchase your CD, Jazz and Blues, how can they go about doing that? You got a website? You have a phone number where they can get in touch with you?
I have a phone number. I'm working on a website.
All right. What's that phone number?
The phone number is 302-377-6955. 7119.
Now, let me give everybody a chance to get a pen and a piece of paper. Give that number one more time, Therese.
Okay. The number is 302-377-7119.
All right. Now, I know that you play at the place called the Nomad here sometimes.
Yes, sir.
Which is a hot jazz spot here in Wilmington, Delaware, on 9th and Orange. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the tri-state area, go by the Nomad sometimes on a Friday or Saturday night, and you may be able to check out my man Torres playing his saxophone. We're going to chat more with you a little bit later on with all of our guests together. You're going to stick around with us?
Yes, I will.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great saxophonist Mr. Torres Posey on Jazz on My Mind. All right, get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned, because coming up next, I have a young lady who can tell us more about jazz than any encyclopedia. Karen Rege is coming up next. But first, I want you to get that pen and paper ready, because you know what happens every Wednesday night at this time. It's time now for This Week in Jazz. And it's time for me to present this week's jazz events for the West Coast for This Week in Jazz. Starting with tomorrow, June 2nd through June 5th, it's the hot jazz group called Bad Plus, and they're going to be performing at the Catalina Bar and Grill, located at 6725 Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. For more information, you can call 323-466-2210 for jazz information. And on Thursday, June 2nd, it's Jazz at its Finest with Rio Fiumara, and that's happening at Columbo's Restaurant. Their address is 1833 Colorado Boulevard in Eagle Rock, California, just a couple of miles outside of Los Angeles. For jazz times and events, you can call Columbo's at 323-254-9138 for jazz information. And on Saturday, June 4th, it's the great Bob DeCina and his Latin Jazz. I love me some Latin jazz. That's happening at Pip's Restaurant, located at 1356 South La Brea in L.A. Now, at Pip's, you got to make a reservation if you plan on going to see Bob DeCina. That's right, reservations are highly recommended. And you can make your reservation by calling 323-954-7477. And on Sunday, June 5th, it's the Ryan Roberts Jazz Trio at the Federal Bar, located at 5303 Lancashire Boulevard in North Hollywood. You can call them at 818-980-2555 for jazz events. And if you want some great jazz on the radio, I got to tell you about my main man, Mr. Bubba Jackson. You can hear Bubba radio coming to you from 88.1, which is K-Jazz, out of Long Beach, California. Now you can catch Bubba on from 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, you can also listen to Bubba anywhere in the world on the internet. All you have to do is log on to www.jazzandblues.org to check out my man, Bubba Jackson. And for all of our Midwest viewers in Chicago, Chicago has the premier jazz spot called Close Up 2. Let me tell you, there's always some fantastic, smooth jazz happening at Close Up 2. For jazz events and showtimes, call 312-385-1111. Once again, that's Close Up 2 in Chicago. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, for live jazz events from coast to coast, all you have to do is log on to jazzonmymind.com. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome composer, educator, and pianist, Karen Rege to Jazz on My Mind. Karen.
Hey, how are you?
All right, welcome back, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back.
Well, you know, I wanted you to come back because you had such a terrific presentation the last time. In fact, you probably broke the record. This is your third time.
Yeah, in about 2 months.
In one season of being on Jazz on My Mind. Number one, you were on our very first show.
Yes, that's right.
Where we had a good jazz discussion. Mm-hmm. And then about 3 weeks ago, you performed with Harry Spencer.
I did.
And now you're back again.
I am.
I'm glad you made some time.
Well, thank you.
Now, Karen, let's talk about Karen Rege. For the sake of all the people, the audience who did not see you the first two times.
Okay.
Let's talk about Karen Rege and what you are about musically. What's happening with you music-wise?
Wow. If you'd asked me that about 6 months ago, I would have had a very different answer. But this spring, things have really taken off, a lot in part to the opening of the Nomad right down the street here.
Right.
I've been performing a lot with Harry Spencer and Friends Jazz Quartet. We're in the Nomad every second Friday of the month.
Wow,
and we'll also be there hosting the after party and jam session for the Clifford Brown Jazz Festival, which is coming up. So we'll be in there on the 24th and the 25th. So come out, join us. If you're a musician, bring your horn and sit in with us.
Now, we've been talking about the Nomad. The Nomad is a hot new jazz spot, opened here in Wilmington, Delaware, opened about maybe 4 months ago. And it is a beautiful, marvelous spot to go hear some real great jazz.
Yes.
And you're performing there with Harry and doing your thing. So my hat goes off to you and the Nomad.
Great, yeah.
Now, I introduced you as a composer, a pianist, an educator, all of the above. My God.
Well, the educator I've been doing for a while. The composer is sort of a new hat that I've been wearing. In the last couple of years, I've been just getting compositions. I don't necessarily sit down to write. I wait till the powers that be, that are greater than us, dictate to us, and I just, sort of write down what I get. And sometimes it's jazz, sometimes it's Latin, sometimes it's R&B. Don't know what I'm going to get. Sometimes I get bits and pieces, and sometimes I get whole tunes. Sometimes I get words, sometimes I don't. So
that's the way it goes.
It's a great creative endeavor. So we've been playing a lot of my tunes with Harry Spencer. Also, we recorded 2 of my tunes with the other group that I work with called Atiba's Dream, which is a local group made up of some fabulous musicians, including Harry Spencer, Vernon James, Michael Carty on drums. We've had a number of different bass players, but we also work with Kamau Nagom on African percussion, and James Dixon on trumpet. And we
trumpeter.
This is a very interesting group. We do all original compositions by either band members or musicians from the Wilmington community. So we do some old tunes, not necessarily Clifford Brown, but from some of the people that played with him and knew him as well, like Deanie Jenkins and a few other people. So and originals by the band as well. And then, of course, I have my own Latin ensemble called Pastiche, and we are a 7-member group. We have a singer, trumpeter, saxophone, flute. That's Vernon James. We have a fabulous drummer from Cuba named Francois Zayas, who plays with Vanessa Santi, out of Philly. And we also have a percussionist as well and bass player. And so we're playing around as well, doing straight-ahead Cuban and also some Latin, some contemporary Cuban. And more recently, I'm into a new project.
Tell us about that.
The new project has no name yet. We have no promotional materials yet. We're that new. And we are doing sort of jazz tunes with a twist, or R&B tunes as jazz. And that group is featuring Brandy Chavis on vocals.
Whoa.
Wonderful vocals.
The daughter of Gerald Chavis.
Yes. And most people, and her mom was a singer too. Mary was a singer. And so most people don't know of Brandy. They know her as a promoter, but not as a singer. So we're dragging Brandy out of the closet. She's got a fabulous voice. In fact, she and I will be doing a duo on Sunday, the 12th of June, for a festival or celebration that we're doing in honor of Loving versus Virginia, which was when they repealed the miscegenation law and finally legalized interracial marriages in this country. So we're doing a celebration, a community celebration in honor of that up at our church, or my church anyway, which is the First Unitarian Church on Halstead Road right off of Concord Pike. So she and I are doing a jazz duo, but this other ensemble also features great Aaron Walker, who had played with Abby
drummer.
Lincoln, yes.
Yeah, fantastic
and
drummer.
also Martin Hargrove, who is known locally mostly as an opera singer. He works a lot with Opera Delaware, but he's also a great blues, a jazz and R&B guitar player and bass player. So we've got a little quartet happening there, so stay tuned. You're going to hear a lot more from us coming up. So, yeah, we've been busy.
And I think I'm busy. I said to myself, but my God, you just took the cake.
I know, and I haven't even started teaching again yet.
Now, where did your love for music begin? When did you realize that music is my calling? I need to be involved with that.
Well, that's a good question. They actually documented back when I was in kindergarten that I was involved in music. And my family, we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So my parents, I came from up in north central Massachusetts, and my parents used to clean the local town hall, for extra money on the weekends. And there was an old piano in there. And so to get out of my duties of having to dust offices, I used to go plunk on the piano. So when they renovated the town hall and actually threw the old piano to the dump, my dad and his brother got a pickup truck and went and hauled it out of the dump and put it in my basement. And it was so cold down there, I used to have to practice with gloves on. But that's how I started.
My goodness. So now you're composing, you're performing, and you're just now getting back into the teaching.
Well, I've been teaching for the past few years.
And what do you teach? Tell us about that.
I teach a course in world music, actually, at Delaware County Community College, where I actually have a day job. But it's been a fabulous class learning about both traditional musics, and I've been delving into a lot of the contemporary musics, which is very interesting because when we look at jazz and we look at it in other parts of the world, we see often much more of appreciation for jazz in other parts of the world. And if you ask me where I think jazz is going in the future, I think a lot of it's going to happen overseas.
Well, that's interesting that you said that because jazz has always been happening overseas.
Yes.
Because if you go back, if I can interject, if you go back to the 30s, Josephine Baker and a lot of performers, especially the Afro-American performers, they could not perform here in America. They had to go to Europe, to London, especially, and to Paris to perform. So jazz has always been happening for us in London.
Yes, all of Europe, as well, and also Japan has a very, very large audience for that. So, but what we're starting to see is a lot more of a mix. When I'm looking at the contemporary world musics that are coming out, I'm seeing a lot of jazz influence in some of them.
Yeah.
Particularly the jazz from the 70s for some reason. I'm seeing a lot of that influence happening. So, and also the American musicians here are mixing. For example, I'm looking at Dee Dee Bridgewater's project, Red Earth.
Great vocalist.
Where she went back,
Great performer.
In fact, I actually studied piano with Edsel Gomez, her piano player, which is very funny. But yeah, they went back and did that whole project in Africa with the Senegalese musicians, and I knew the Senegalese musicians, but I didn't know the connection there between them and Dee Dee Bridgewater. So we're seeing a lot of the American musicians exploring other world musics, and then the world musicians exploring jazz. And we're seeing that, especially now with the technology that we have available, and the internet, and the ability to get recordings and YouTube videos and things like that. I think we're starting to see a lot more of a cross, and I think that's what's going to drive jazz in the future.
That's beautiful. And when you mentioned Dee Dee Bridgewater, who's a great friend to Jazz on My Mind, before we left Los Angeles in 2009, I had the pleasure of interviewing her on Jazz on My Mind. Fantastic vocalist, performer. She's been doing her thing for a long time.
Yes, she has.
Everyone in the industry respects Dee Dee Bridgewater.
Yes, I've not met her personally, but
A wonderful lady.
I obviously know Edsel very well.
Yeah, wonderful lady. Now, your music, you're doing jazz, you're doing Latin jazz. What's happening with your Latin jazz? Because I love Latin jazz.
Oh, I do too.
Let's talk about Latin jazz for a second.
Well, it was funny. I kind of got into it in a roundabout way. I used to teach at Christina Cultural Arts Center right down the street, which celebrates
foundation.
African American culture. And I was there, and a gentleman knocked on my door one night and asked me if I wanted to be part of a salsa band, and I had no clue. I'd never done any of that. Got involved in that. Fell in love with the music, but thought, well, there's got to be something more. I need to go back to the roots. So in 2002, I actually went to Cuba to study. And I studied with Yaroli Abreu, who is the conga player for Chucho Valdez and was on the Grammy Award-winning album. So I learned a lot of the traditional rhythms from him. And have brought it back, and working with, I worked with the group Havana Sax for a while. When they were here in this country on tour in 2002, some of them stayed at my house, so I had the pleasure of working with them and really getting to know, and as a result, Francois Zayas, the drummer from that group who came to this country, is working in my band. So I'm learning constantly from Francois and from other people, in the area. And there's some great music, boy. That's all about the rhythm.
When you talk about Latin jazz, you have to look at the history of Latin jazz.
Yep.
You have to look at the greats like Tito Puente, Punto Sanchez, good friend of jazz on my mind, and also Coke Escovedo, whose son Paris Escovedo is continuing his father's legend in that Latin jazz vein. It's a lot of Latin history.
There is.
A lot of Latin jazz history.
Right. And in fact, we're going to be blessed. David Sanchez is coming back here to Wilmington for the Clifford Brown Jazz Festival as part of a project. So he's I've met him a number of times as well. So he's great.
Are you going to be performing at the Clifford Brown Jazz Festival?
We're doing the after party.
That's right. You and Harry Spencer at the Nomad.
Yep.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to seeing you performing there. And stick around because we're going to bring back all the guests.
That sounds
and we're going to have a little round table discussion on jazz.
Great.
Is that okay?
That's fine. And thank you so much for doing your show. I was talking to my friend Dr. Guthrie Ramsey, who went to school with me. We're good colleagues. I respect him so much as a historian.
Musician.
And we were talking about what important work that you're doing here, documenting the history of the music at the local level. That's really important to us historians as well.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be accepted, Jazz on My Mind, to be accepted by the community because we came here just hoping to move this forward. And by the grace of God, it has happened.
That's right.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much for having me
again. Don't go too
I will.
far. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Rege on Jazz on My Mind. Coming up next, we're going to have a jazz chat with one of the greatest bassists in the world of music, Mr. Vincent Adkins is coming up next. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to reach over to the side and grab your pen and paper and get ready because right now it's time for This Week in Jazz on the East Coast. Let's start with tomorrow night, Thursday, June 2nd. It's the Thursday Night Jazz Party at Basil Bar and Grill, located at 422 Delaware Avenue, right here in Wilmington, Delaware, which is I call the jazz capital of the world. This week, the Basil will feature music by the Brit Jolly Experience. Now, the jazz party begins tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and the jazz party is hosted by yours truly. So if you're in the Delaware tri-state area, come on down to Basil Bar and Grill tomorrow night. And that address again is 422 Delaware Avenue in Wilmington, Delaware. Also, every Friday through Saturday, it's jazz at its finest at the Nomad Jazz Bar. Now, you've heard us talking about it here on the show. The Nomad is located at 905 North Orange in Wilmington, Delaware. You can call them at 302-655-8800. It's the hot new jazz club on the East Coast, and every weekend there's something happening at the Nomad. Once again, you can call them at 302-655-8800. And on Sunday, June 5th, this coming Sunday, it's a big jazz concert for the Wilmington Youth Jazz Band. Now, this concert will be the concert of the year. The program will feature some of tomorrow's great jazz stars today. It's going to be happening at the Music School of Delaware, located at 4101 Washington Street in Wilmington. For more information, you can call 302-834-7148. I'm going to tell you more about that in a little bit later. And also, if you want some jazz on the radio, every Monday morning at 2 a.m., my friend Fawnay is on the radio jamming some straight-ahead jazz. Fawnay comes to you from WPFW, which is 89.3 FM out of Washington, D.C. You can check out Fawnay on the internet. All you have to do is log on to WPFW.org. You can check out Fawnay from 2 a.m. until 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for some Monday night jazz, It's the Tony Williams Monday Night Jazz Jam Session. And that happens at the La Rose Social Club. The address is 5531 Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia. Showtime is 6 until 11 p.m. That's every Monday night at the La Rose Social Club. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to log on to jazzonmymind.com for all great jazz events from coast to coast. Now, everyone, let's welcome renowned bassist and educator, Mr. Vincent Adkins, to Jazz on My Mind. Welcome to Jazz on My Mind again, Vincent.
Always good to be here.
It's good to have you back. I'm telling you, this must be return night only because we've got some outstanding musicians here, including yourself, who have a lot to talk about in regards to jazz. Now, I introduced you as one of the greatest bassists here on the East Coast and in the world of music. Jazz is your thing. How did you start playing the bass?
Let's see. We think back here. It seems like so long ago. I wanted to be in my high school jazz band. And at the time I was a tuba player, and I didn't see too many tuba players in the jazz band. So we had a bunch of other bass players in the school, but I figured it out that they would all graduate and there wouldn't be anybody left to play bass.
That's a good theory.
I taught myself, actually. Started teaching myself and took what I knew on tuba and just kind of applied it to the bass, and then I started playing upright bass in an orchestra. And my senior year in high school, I played in a jazz band, and that was my goal.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got started.
What jazz? We all love jazz. What made you gravitate to jazz? Because did you start playing jazz when you first picked up your instruments? Was jazz on your mind?
No.
No pun intended.
No, at the time, jazz was not on my mind. It was far from my mind. But when I got into the jazz band and started trying to play the music, and I got music it gave me music that didn't have notes on it. It just had chord progressions. And I said, well, what do I do with this? And he said, well, you need to play. And I said, well, what do I play? And I started listening, and that kind of brought me closer to the music.
You played with some very outstanding groups. Number one, you played bass for the legendary Faustina Dixon Kilgore. How is it playing jazz when you're cooking, when you're grooving with other musicians? What does that do for you?
Well, it's nothing like getting into that groove. You know, once you're in that groove, my hardest problem is it'll be time to stop. And I want to keep going. But once you get in that groove, it's just, you're just there. It's just like the world is not going on other than what's in that groove. So it's just tremendous to be in that zone playing.
Now, also introduce you as an educator. You're working in the school system.
Yes.
You're working with kids. And you're teaching them music as well.
Yes.
Even though it's not necessarily jazz. But
they get some jazz.
But they get some jazz.
Oh, they get a lot of jazz.
Give us an idea as to what one of your daily lessons would be when you're showing the kids how to get into jazz. What do you use primarily?
Well, I find myself having to come up sometimes with some gimmicks to get them to listen because they have this opinion about jazz.
Now, let me stop before.
Okay.
What ages now? When we're talking, let the audience know what ages you're talking about.
Right now, I'm teaching actually kindergarten through 5th grade.
Wow, now that's saying something.
And
now continue.
If they're listening to other music, why not have them listen to jazz too?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
the first thing that I teach them is that even though you may not like the music, you need to know about it. You need to know that it does exist. And then I'll, do some little tricks or some little games, but get them into it. I think when I was on before, I talked about a lesson that I did on improvisation.
Share that for the audience who didn't see that show.
Well, what I did, I did this with 2nd and 3rd grade actually, and we gave them a definition of improvisation, and they said, well, what does that do in music? So I had them make up a title, And on their title, my job was whatever title they came up with, I had to make a song up about it. So, of course, I used some jazz things. So I sat at the piano, and I'm not the world's greatest piano player.
Right.
But, I mean, for what they were coming up with, it was, I could do that. And every title they came up with, I came up with a song about it.
Give me a for instance.
Put me on the spot here. I think one person came up with, "It's raining outside and we can't have recess." So I did my little chords and, my little music. "It's raining outside. We can't have recess today." And, so just played some things on the piano.
Right.
And, they got into it and started having fun. And
Right.
so then it became, okay, well, what else can we do? My turn. And it became, a real cool lesson with them. And now that group understands improvisation.
And they have progressed, I'm sure, since that lesson.
Yes.
How does it feel to you being able to instruct these kids, the future stars of tomorrow? It's got to make you feel good knowing that you are impacting their lives.
Well, it's real cool to know and actually to be able to see the influence that you've had on some of the students. I get now in my group that I have, the drummer is one of my former students.
Mm-hmm.
And, when he comes and plays for me, it's just really interesting because here he was one of my students and now he is, my contemporary. He's playing and we're playing in different places. So and for them to be able to say, well, I'm playing because of what you taught me in school or because we learned this from you. And so it just really makes you feel good to be able to know that you've had an impact on some of the kids.
And I know it's got to make you feel good. Now, your training, where did you learn how to play the bass? Did you learn on your own? Or?
Well, I taught myself the bass.
Yeah.
I never took private lessons, and once I started, I just did a lot of listening and watching, and anytime I could see, and I'm still doing that, and anytime I see a bass player, I'm sitting there studying and, watching and saying, okay, I like that, well, I'll add that, I like that, he did that way, and just, keep adding. And of course, listening to every bass player imaginable.
Right.
But it's a ongoing process. It doesn't ever stop.
Yeah. Now, because when you mention bass, I mean, for you to say, okay, I want to play the bass, when you got so many legendary bassists, you got the great Charles Mingus, you have James Jamerson, Stanley Clarke. I mean, the list just goes on. It takes a lot to say, hey, I want to do that too.
Well, I gravitate to the bass end.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was a tuba player, and I love the tuba.
Yeah.
I really love playing the tuba. And when the opportunity came to start learning the bass, it was just still that low end. So it was just another extension of what I had been doing already. So I was able to take a lot of what I played on tuba and say, hey, let's try it on bass.
There you go. Now let me ask you a question, Mr. Adkins. If there's someone watching, and say for instance, a youngster is watching right now, he wants to learn how to play the bass, learn how to play any instrument. You being an educator,
yes.
What is one of the first things you would tell that child?
Depending on the age, the first thing, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because once you get started, there's going to be a time where in the beginning it's tough to be a beginner because it's not exciting. But as it progresses, then it becomes more and more exciting. So, you have to put the video games down and leave the computer alone, and you have to put the time in on the instrument. And if you're not willing to put some time in on the instrument, then you really, maybe that's not what you want to do. But if you're serious about the instrument, start putting the time in on the instrument. My kids at home, my personal kids, they all play instruments, and we spend some time, playing instruments.
Yeah,
there's always a concert at my house.
Exactly. Well, I think that's wonderful because you and Karen Rege, who was just on the show, as well as Tony Smith coming on, you guys deal with kids. You deal with the youth coming up. And in a lot of ways, they learn from you not only music, but essentially they also learn how to become better people in the community. And I know that's got to even warm your heart even more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're, a lot of the kids, you're putting the time into, they're practicing, it keeps them out of trouble. I mean, let's face it, it's too easy to get into trouble these days. So if you're spending time on that instrument, you're practicing, you're trying to play and do different things, it'll keep you out of trouble.
And number one, too, kids also, and I think Vincent will concur with this, learn how to read.
Definitely.
That's first and foremost.
Definitely. I mean, there are a lot of great musicians that, I play with that can't read, but I just think that it would take their playing to another level.
To learn how to read music.
Being able to read some music.
Learn how to read. Thank you, Vincent, for coming back. You're going to stick around because we're going to have a nice round table discussion with all of our guests. You're going to stick around and participate?
I'll be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Vincent Adkins on Jazz on My Mind. All right, coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue our discussion on jazz with the legendary trumpeter, Mr. Tony Smith. But first, let me remind you of this. Each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we broadcast our program live from the Paradise Palms Restaurant, located at 901 North King in Wilmington, Delaware. So we invite you to come and watch the show free. And while you're watching the show, you can dine on some great Caribbean food. Now, the food here at the Paradise Palms is so good because the main man, the head chef, Mr. Wendell, prepares every dish with the love of Jamaica. So we invite each of you to come on down to the show and enjoy some fantastic Caribbean cuisine. Once again, the Paradise Palms is located at 901 North King in Wilmington, Delaware. And this season, we've got something different happening. Right after the show is finished broadcasting, there's a fantastic jazz jam session, which is hosted by one of the greatest jazz couples in the world, Alfie Moss and Dexter Coons. So if you're in the tri-state area, come on down to the Paradise Palms, watch the show, bring your instrument, and you can participate in a terrific jam session hosted by Alfie Moss and Dexter Coons. That's every Wednesday night right here at the Paradise Palms, 901 North King in Wilmington, Delaware. All right, everyone, let's welcome legendary trumpeter and author, Mr. Tony Smith, to Jazz on My Mind.
All right. you got the big cat back again,
the big cat is back.
All right.
You know what, Tony? I tell you, I had told you earlier, I tried for 2 years to get you on the show. Now I got you on back-to-back. How lucky could I be?
You're the luckiest guy in the world because you got the big cat, the one and only, all the way live. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to document this stuff. You came to town, you're documenting things for people. Documentation. The kids nowadays, they're lucky to be able to have things documented.
Yeah.
I would pay $1 million to be able to look back and either listen to or see my great-grandparents doing what they
do.
That's
deep. Yeah, that's deep. That
and
is
kids now, we're taking the time now for all the musicians out there. Go ahead and make them CDs. Go ahead, and poets. Go ahead and do and make videos and stuff so you can pass it along to your grandkids.
Yeah.
They want to see you.
Yeah.
I want to see mine.
Well, Tony, that's an interesting point because I never thought about it in those terms, but you're right. Because having you on and Karen and Torres and also Vincent and all the other musicians that we've had on for the last 2 seasons, the videos are available to be seen. Everyone could see them. So therefore, the family and everyone could see the people, their relatives' legacies, so to speak.
There you go.
Well,
that's what it's all about. That's the driving force.
Let's talk about you, Tony. Number one, you are a great trumpeter, I'm telling you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't get a chance to see him perform last week on the show, it's on our website, jazzonmymind.tv. Tony's performance last week, which was exceptional. And we got a chance to talk a little bit about you, your music, and also you have co-authored a book that we talked on called The Waymore. You and Will Smith Sr. were on the show last week, and we chatted about the book. How is the book coming along? Let's talk about the book for a second.
The book is coming along pretty well. We're doing a lot of book signings. We just got done doing the Philadelphia Free Library tour. Tomorrow we'll be in Newark, New Jersey, doing a presentation, book signing, book sales for a college classroom. Yeah. They actually bought 45 books. 45 or so books. They read it. We're going to do our pretty much an hour of presentation, which includes readings, music, and all kinds of things. And we're going to have a question and answer afterwards. So it's going to be a great time. We're having fun.
Beautiful.
You know, with this. And that's the important thing. We're doing what we're doing because we're having fun. We want to have some fun doing it.
There you go.
So it's going pretty well.
And I think that's a wonderful combination. You and Mr. Smith Sr. No relation.
No relation. He disowned me as a son. So.
But you two have done a wonderful job in creating The Waymore, because The Waymore essentially is a book about a jazz club in Philadelphia. It just so happens that it's named after a fantastic jazz drummer named Wayne Morgan. Give us a little bit more insight on the book. Let the audience know so we can entice them to go purchase that book.
All right. It's a book about musicians and the ladies who like to come and see them play. It's really not about jazz per se, but it's about life's lessons. There are many life's lessons to be learned from reading the book, and many opportunities for redemption. So it's a book that you have to read. People who've picked it up, they say they have a hard time putting it down. So you need to pick it up. www.thewaymore.com or at major bookstores at Tri-State Mall in Wilmington or Claymont, Delaware.
That's beautiful. And I'm hoping to get my copy sometime soon.
I got one for you.
Thank you, Tony.
All right.
Now, let's talk about your musicianship. You are an outstanding trumpeter. You've been playing for how long now?
I've been playing for a good 40-something years, 40 years, and you're saying a great musician. I got finished the show the other week, and I got to thinking about what would Posey have said, listening to what I did, and I know he would have took me over his house, sat me down, and not give me any compliments, but tell me everything I did wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm a practicing musician.
It's always work in progress.
Always a work in progress, yeah. And the trumpet is such an unforgiving instrument. One day you'll be playing pretty well. The next day it says, I'm not going to play for you.
Really?
But you just do the best you can with it. So, yes, I'm a practicing musician. Under the tutelage of the late Robert Posey Lowry, who taught a method that a lot of people talk about, but I don't hear a lot of people actually trying to explain what it's all about. And like Posey used to tell me, I would explain certain theories to him. He would say, don't tell me about it. He said, play it. I need to hear it. So don't talk about it, play it.
Well, I got to say, ladies and gentlemen, I must interject that to some people who have never ventured to the East Coast, and I thank God that Jazz on My Mind did, because I got to learn about Posey Lowry, the gentleman who instructed you for many years. Because, ladies and gentlemen, until you really read on Posey Lowry, you don't understand the impact this man had on music here on the East Coast. He not only taught you, but he taught Faustina Dixon, who is one of the 5 top female musicians in the world. He also instructed Dexter Kuntz, who is his nephew, who got some first-hand lessons, and the list goes on. Gerald Chavis. I mean, it's unbelievable about the people this man has impacted in their lives. It's astounding.
Yeah, I met a guy in the supermarket the other day. He played with a group called the Crown Heights Affair.
I remember them from the 70s and the 80s.
And he told me a story
that
that he was up in upstate New York one day, and they happened to run into Dizzy Gillespie.
Woo.
And Dizzy asked them. Once they found out that they were from the guy was from Wilmington. He said, "Oh, do you know Boise?" And the guy said, "No, I don't know him." He asked, "Does anybody else know Boise?" And they said, "No." He said, "Well, y'all ain't crap then." So that's a funny story.
Really, I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
I'm glad we are here. Jazz on My Mind is here, but I'm sorry that we came late after his passing, because it would have been an extreme honor to have met.
You missed a beautiful guy.
Yeah.
I think he was an angel sent here.
He definitely
to teach people like me who may have had potential but just didn't know what to do with it. He was an angel sent here to teach people. And
he also was the instructor to the late, great Clifford Brown.
Yes.
And if all of you out there know Clifford Brown. If you know jazz, you got to know Clifford Brown has touched you. His music has touched you. Boise instructed Clifford on how to play that trumpet. And I'm telling you, it's amazing.
Yes, and Boise, he would tell us a lot of stories about Clifford and all the people that he taught. And just before Clifford passed away, just before he got in the car and was going to wherever he was going, Boise always says that Clifford called him and said, "I got to get back with you. You got to make me keep playing those classes." That was Boise's method. It was called the classes. And make me keep playing these classes. And that's what Boise's method is called, the classes. And one day I'll come back and talk about the technical side of what the classes are. Well, basically, for the musicians out there, he took your scale, and for each scale tone, he gave each scale tone a scale and a chord. And he arranged them in a way to make them make musical sense. So each step of the scale was arranged in an order. 1 to the relative minor 6, to the 4, to the 2, to the 3, to the 5, to the 1. And you use that pattern to create motifs that are going to identify you. So he would give you these motifs, and you take the motifs and you play them to make them sound like you. Not like anybody else, but like you. So. So.
How long did you get a chance to study under Boise?
Well, I studied under Boise basically after I got out of college, because I was so afraid to go see him because I knew he was going to expose all of my weaknesses. And so I hid from him for about 3 years, and I went to him. I was so afraid of him that I went to him with a bass guitar. So right after college, I started studying with him. And so the next day I came back with a trumpet, and he said, "Oh, you need to decide what you're going to play." So that was 1 year after I graduated from college. I started with Boise. I studied with him. I was under him every day for about 3 years, every single day, watching, listening, watching and see how he was teaching younger kids. It was amazing when Vince mentioned about what you say to young kids. Boise would ask the young kid, he would say, "Do you really want to play that instrument? Or do you just want to get up on the stage and be seen?" Yeah. He said, "If you want to just be seen, I'll teach you 3 chords on the guitar and teach you to hop on one leg and say goodbye to you."
And that's it.
He said, "But if you want to really learn that instrument, you're going to have to practice, and practice some more."
Yeah. Now, your music, you've got several CDs that have been released.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your CDs real quick.
Okay, the first one I did is called Slammin' at Christina. It was a CD that I did down at Christina Cultural Arts Center, where I also worked, where I founded the student band down at Christina Center. Wow. The next CD I did was after I retired. Matter of fact, I retired and created 4 CDs in a matter of a year. I did them in my basement on my own. with the keyboard, and and to me they sound pretty good, but they need a little bit of work, but at least they're documented. They're documented for my kids to have, for my grandkids to listen to, and that's the important part to me.
Now, you say retired. You were a vice principal.
Right, Brandywine High School.
How do you miss teaching those kids? Do you miss the school, the classroom?
I miss the kids. I do miss them, but I'm doing what I want to do now.
Yeah.
I can practice as long as I want. I can go where I want to go. I can go on tour if I want to go. I'm having a good time. I'm playing with the Freedom Jazz Orchestra up in Philadelphia. I'm playing with the Millennium Orchestra in Philadelphia. I'm also playing with Dr. Guy Ramsey up in Philadelphia. I have my own group. I'm going to be at the West Oak Lane Jazz Festival on Friday the 17th, Saturday the 18th at Brownies. I'm going to be at also the West Oak Lane Festival on Sunday with the Freedom Jazz Orchestra.
Wow.
Penn's Landing, the 24th, for a Welcome America tour events down at Penn's Landing on June 24th.
Man, you're busy.
I stay on the run because I got time to do what I want to do.
You do. Before we wrap up this conversation, tell the audience how someone can get in touch with you in regards to the book, in regards to your music, in regards to Tony Smith. How can someone contact you?
www.TonySmithJazzTrumpeter.com, www.TonySmithJazzTrumpeter.com, or www.thewaymore.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Tony Smith. Tony, we're going to have a conversation with all of our guests. You're going to stick around with me, and we're going to have a little jazz discussion.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, trumpeter and co-author, Mr. Tony Smith on Jazz on My Mind. Coming up, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have all four of our guests return, and believe me, I'm looking forward to this jazz chat, and I know you are too. But right now, I'd like to remind you, once again, ladies and gentlemen, something big that's going to be happening this coming Sunday, June 5th. It's going to be the Wilmington Youth Jazz Band. Now, I got to tell you a little something about the Wilmington Youth Jazz Band. The Wilmington Youth Jazz Band is a collection of young individuals, the youth, and they're going to be coming together to perform a great jazz concert. It's going to be at the Music School of Delaware here in Wilmington. The address is 4101 Washington Street in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, we want you to come out to support these youngsters and help them become a more formidable part in the music world and in our community. So I'm inviting each and every one of you, if you're in the tri-state area, make sure this Sunday that you are at the Music School of Delaware in Wilmington so that you can see these fantastic young people perform some great jazz. Now, the show begins at 6 p.m. Now, the admission, they're only asking for a $10 donation. And if you are a student, $3. And if you're under 5, you get in free. Now, for more information regarding this great jazz event coming this Sunday, June 5th, I want you to call this phone number right here, ladies and gentlemen. Area code 302-834-7148. Come on out if you're in the tri-state area. Be sure to come to the Music School of Delaware and watch these young jazz stars play some terrific jazz music. Once again, it's happening this Sunday, June 5th, at the Music School of Delaware here in Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you so much, and we do hope to see you then, this coming Sunday. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to welcome back all of our featured guests on tonight's show. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Smith, great trumpeter, trumpeter and author. Karen Rege, pianist, composer, and educator. Also, Posey, saxophonist. and Vincent Adkins. Wonderful, wonderful bassist. Now, what we're going to do now, I made this time available so that we all can sit and talk about jazz. I want to start, Karen, if I can start with you. I want to know, where do you feel with the music, jazz? Where is it going? Is jazz headed in a positive place right now, in your opinion?
Of course. As I mentioned before, I think that thank you. As I mentioned before, I think that we're going to see a lot more of the international scene playing a part. Both the American musicians delving into world musics and also international musicians working more in jazz and a lot more crossover. And I think that's what's going to keep the music alive and keep it going. Let me
now, Torres, you're playing your sax. You're getting down. The people have heard you. What do you think? Is jazz going to be here for us in the future years? What's going to happen with jazz?
I believe it's going to keep moving. It's going to keep, excuse me, it's going to keep climbing because we all going to keep bringing it out there. Mm-hmm. It's not going to just stay at one level. It's going to keep going. Matter of fact, I think it's getting more popular.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think, Vincent? Is jazz becoming more popular? I mean, just throw your opinion out there. What do you think?
Well, one thing I can say is as long as I'm teaching, it is going to get more popular because I'm going to teach it. I'm going to make sure that I do my part to contribute to keeping jazz alive. Mm-hmm. Not that it is dead or anything, but just getting our younger kids to know the music.
Yeah. Tony, in your opinion, jazz is happening. You are a big part of the jazz scene. Now, you look back to where jazz was many years ago. We don't have the avenues to hear jazz like we used to. The radio stations are not as prominent as they used to. The music has changed. What do we have to do in order to keep jazz going, Tony? I'm sure you have thought about that. What do we need to do to keep that jazz music going?
We need to continue to educate the young folks of where this jazz came from. And that's the only way to get it moving forward, is to expose them to it, in such a way. And I've shared this on a number of occasions that, my hope and dream and what drives me is to make sure that when my great grandkids see the word jazz in a encyclopedia, that they know what that means. And hopefully Kenny G's picture is not going to be there.
No, I think yours will be.
Nothing against Kenny G, but the music came from somewhere.
Yeah.
So we got to keep educating.
Yeah. Now, this coming Sunday, I just did a commercial promo for the Wilmington Youth Jazz Band. Karen, are you familiar with the Wilmington Youth Jazz Band?
Yes, I am, because I'm involved in the band with James Dixon and Vernon James, and they're the ones that run the band.
There are the instructors, and I'm so blessed to be on the board of directors with Faustina and Vernon James and James Dixon. Yep. Are you going to be? Do you think you'll have time Sunday to come and watch the program?
I'm going to try to get over there.
Yeah, to see these young kids perform.
Some great talent.
Yeah, great talent. And Torres, you are doing your thing. When kids come up to you and ask you, how do you play your horn? Do you ever take time out to show these kids what a saxophone is all about?
I try to take the time out to just get them to understand about music, period. Sometimes I have some kids come up and want to know what make you tick.
Yeah. I
said music gets to your heart. If you can understand music, you can really free yourself from your music.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to embrace with them.
Yeah.
Not so much playing, but just to give them an understanding what music is about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vincent, we all love jazz music. We all are committed to keeping jazz alive, and we know we got to pass that torch on to the younger generation in order to make that happen. Are you all behind that? Is that your pledge? Is that what you're dedicated?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Like I said, I do all the time. I kind of cheat a little on my curriculum. Don't tell anybody that. And, I stay with jazz and I incorporate it with most of the lessons that I teach my kids. So they're definitely getting it from me.
Would anybody like to make a final comment about jazz before we go? Vincent, start with you. Give us a final comment about jazz. Think about it. Give us a comment about jazz.
It is just such an incredible music. To study it and to understand, how these guys came up with these ideas and, how it's evolving. It is just an incredible music, and I enjoy and look forward to continuing to play it.
Therese, can you give us a final comment on jazz?
Well, my thing is I'm trying to come up with something on my own. And I think my next CD is going to be called Keep It Moving.
And that means jazz music, keep it moving.
Exactly.
All right. Karen, what about you? You want to give us a final comment on jazz?
Well, I think jazz is America's true art form. It's one of the only true American art forms that there is. And I think that we, as a culture, need to embrace it and celebrate it and bring it to the rest of the world. Keep that alive.
Beautiful. Tony, Mr. Smith, what about you? Can you use that? Thank you, Tony. What
Karen, you said it all. That's just what I was getting ready to say. You stole my thunder.
You stole mine enough times.
What do you think, Tony? Give us something, though. Give us a final comment.
Jazz. Just listen. If you play, just play. Let the kids see you. Just perform from your heart.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, Vincent Adkins, bassist and also educator. Therese Posey, great saxophonist. Karen Rege, educator, composer, and pianist. And Mr. Tony Smith, trumpeter and co-author of a hot book called The Way More. Tell us again, give us that website where they can get that book, The Way More.
www.thewaymore.com. That's WAYMOR.com. The Way More.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to join us next week as we will have as our guest. Next week, we're going to have the great guitarist Richard Tucker is going to be with us. He's going to perform some great live jazz next week. Also, we're going to have life coach Katrina Banks. She's going to be our co-host. She's a great jazz enthusiast and motivator. So make sure you join us next week for the great jazz of Richard Tucker. And also with us will be Katrina Banks. On behalf of all of us, don't forget to watch, or should I say log on to jazzonmymind.com for all the great jazz events from coast to coast. Log on to jazzonmymind.com and become a member so that we can continue to keep jazz alive. On behalf of my guests, Karen Rege, Vincent Adkins, Therese Posey, and Tony Smith, I'm Richard Blackwell. We want to thank our crew. Also, we want to thank our director, one and only Charlene, the director. Also, Ashley, Alicia, Bernard, who's handling the audio tonight. I'm Richard Blackwell. We want to thank each and every one of you for watching Jazz on My Mind.